Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. I am so honored. I am so blessed tonight. I am so excited about our spotlight on African American history. Really looking at our local heroes in the Tampa Bay area. So tonight we have a FAMU graduate twice with a bachelor's and a doctorate. Honorary doctorate. We have a graduate from Howard University. We have an officer in the U.S. Army, and we have right now a civil rights litigator in our presence, Esquire Attorney Warren Dawson. Attorney Dawson, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome today.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. I am pleased to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'll be happy to. That generally opens up for about an hour discussion, but I will try to keep it real short.
Go ahead and take as long as you want. It's a power hour, so power hours can take longer than an hour.
I am a native of Mulberry, Florida, and as you indicated, I went to the public schools of Polk County and to the Florida A&M University and Howard University. And then as a young man, 21 years old, I was commissioned in the United States Army as an officer and served for a couple of years. I tried to get the military to send me to law school. They wouldn't do so. So I got out of the military and went to law school myself. Went to Howard University, enrolled in there, and entered law school the year that John Kennedy was killed, 1963. I was in law school at the time. They're in Washington, D.C. And from that point, I came after I graduated in 1966, I came to Tampa, Florida, as a law clerk with the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB. And from there, I launched into private practice in 1967 on 29th Street here in Tampa. And I have, for the last approximately 54 years, been in the active practice of law in Hillsborough County, Florida.
Wow, that is amazing.
I should add that in the course of all of those years, I've had a great opportunity to become involved with the organized bar, meaning lawyers' organizations. And in 1983, I served as the president of the National Bar Association, which essentially covers many of the Black lawyers in the United States of America.
Hey, wow, that's an amazing, it is a very interesting span of a career. So I want to start, I heard you say in your introduction that you asked the Army to pay for your law school. So was that one of your goals as a teenager growing up?
It was, and as soon as I knew it, I think that my colleagues at that time period also knew it, because when I was in the 11th grade, I was featured in the yearbook of the 12th grade, in which a picture of me appeared, and under the caption it said, "Future lawyer."
Wow. So you already had that aura about you.
I had something about me that made them think that I was going to be a lawyer, and they proved to be correct.
Okay. So I have a question in the chat. They are asking, being from such a small town, Mulberry, were you recruited by those schools? How did you hear about Florida A&M and Howard University?
Well, I actually, and that's part of my story, so to speak, I actually went to Florida A&M on a choir scholarship, meaning I sang, with my mother as I grew up, and sang well enough to be invited to sing in the Florida A&M University concert choir. And that's how I got to Florida A&M. And for the first semester or whatever, that was my major, voice music. But then I got involved with Army ROTC and got involved with political science. And it was in that time frame that my idea about going to law school became a reality.
Okay, so I see you had some different tracks. So even when you were in 11th grade and 12th grade, you did go to school in scholarship and you were majoring in music, but you had a love for law even before that.
So during those days, at least, it's not necessarily true now, but in those days, I could speak well and talk well and that kind of thing. And in fact, while I was at Florida A&M, I also was the voice of the 100. Meaning I introduced the band. I'm one of the few students that Dr. Foster permitted to introduce the band at Florida A&M.
Okay.
That was a pretty big piece because
that is a big deal.
Dr. Foster was a perfectionist.
Yes.
And he tolerated nothing less than perfection. And wow. I was a perfect speaker for that occasion.
That is amazing. That is so interesting because, you know, of course, my father was in the marching 100, so he was.
Oh, indeed. Well, you know, I when was your father there?
He was there in 60. Okay, I was born, so maybe 68. He graduated from Middleton in 66.
Okay.
67, well, 68. He was a drummer. He was on the drum line there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, his best friend is John.
I finished FAMU in 61, so 61. I was sort of a little bit ahead of him.
Yeah, he was a little bit after you.
Yeah.
But so I know the perfection. I know the you know, the crisp, clean, and so that is a really big deal. And you were a student. So were there any goals that you had, you know, as a child that you didn't meet? Because it sounds like you did a lot. Were there any goals that you had that weren't acquired?
Yeah, well, you know, what I've always said about me, and I do have a book that says who I say that I am, but that's a subject for a later question. But I never for a moment doubted what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I've always had goals and expectations, mm-hmm. And I was never behind. I never had to do makeup. I had a young man who grew up with me, and he got himself together, but after 8 years out in California, he essentially lost those years. And he said, would you believe that for 8 years I was adrift and didn't know what I wanted to do, or I was not going nowhere fast? Mm-hmm. And he said, what about you? I said, there's never been a point in my life when there was 8 minutes that I did not know what I wanted to do and where I should be going.
Just laser focus all the way. That's amazing. Yeah. So what type of law do you practice?
I practiced litigation law, meaning I was a trial lawyer in my better days, and which meant that I could go to trial on any matter. And I've handled all kinds of matters, whether it's a first-degree murder, mm-hmm. To probate litigation, to all kinds of litigation I've handled in the course of my career.
That's good. So what was one of your most interesting cases, if you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness. Obviously, the most interesting case I had was handling the case involving the Hillsborough County school system for 27 years. I
Okay.
labored in a case in federal court called Manning versus the School Board of Hillsborough County.
Okay. Could you
That
tell us
case-
about that?
That is the case that, to the extent that it possibly could do it, it desegregated the public schools of Hillsborough County. But it took about 27, actually more years than that. The case got filed in 1958. I got in the case in 1970 and spent 20 some years litigating that. But that was my most famous contribution. And then I did so for much of that time without compensation. I did it because it was there to be done and needed to be done, and I was determined to do it, even though I was unpaid for 24 out of the 27 years. And even in the 25th year, the compensation that I received could be accurately described as nominal.
Wow.
But although I didn't get paid very much to get to do it, along some years after, just about 4 years ago, the Hillsborough County Board of School Board named a elementary school in my honor, the Warren Hope Dawson Elementary School out in Riverview. And it is a beautiful facility for 900 some students. It is built at a cost of more than $20 million. And it's already full to capacity, and I visit it quite often.
Yes, so that namesake. So for those of you who don't know, this is Dawson of Dawson Elementary School out in
That's
Riverview.
right.
So I mean, like, your legacy does live on. And so I kind of want to touch on this Manning versus School Board of Education, because board versus it was in 1964, was it?
What Brown
Brown versus Board of
was
Education
54.
54.
1954.
Why?
May
Right.
17th, 1954.
And so this you won in the 70s.
This case was
1970.
filed. This case was filed 4 years after Brown versus the
4 years.
board.
So in
Brown
Hillsborough County,
versus the board.
we were still
Yeah.
segregated.
That's right. Brown versus the board was in May 17th of 1954.
Okay.
This case was filed in 1958, 4 years later. And then it took, as was the case with Brown, Brown was still pending. It was decided, but it wasn't over.
Okay.
It just really began to desegregate, Brown did, in 54. Well, this case got filed in 58, and it took 27 or more years, in the view of some, even to now, to properly desegregate. Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting. So, you know, these are like overcoming barriers and things like that a lot of African Americans. So history shows that African Americans, people, we continue to overcome obstacles and barriers in our life. Talk about, if you will, some of the ways that you have successfully overcome some of your own adverse situations. Like, explain some adverse situations and how you've overcome those.
Well, the idea being is that adverse situations for Blacks in the United States come up in every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced problems while I was in the military from a racial perspective, and so forth. So it's hard to run away from them, but for those who are determined to make it anyway, I am a living witness that it can happen, and it does happen. And that is that it's impossible to keep me down if I am determined to rise.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I have a question from one of the participants. Do you find that students most often associate law as a profession with the idea of sensationalism rather than understanding that there are so many different law areas?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, the question was, do you find that students most often associate law as a profession with the idea of sensationalism rather than understanding that there are so many different law areas?
I think I understand that question. Law is what we live by, good, bad, and indifferent. There are so many aspects of the law that determines our democracy, determines our political freedom, or the lack of it. And it's a problem solver, but it's a problem in the first instance without solving the problem. And so John Fitzgerald Kennedy, President of the United States, said that law is not just a way to make a living, it's a wonderful way to think.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So as a student, someone is asking which law areas would you recommend students to explore more of? Which area?
Well, let me clarify that a little bit by saying simply that law is studied generally, and quite often it is practiced specially. But there is a need for good lawyers in every area of expertise in the law. But generally, it is studied generally, as I said. Most criminal lawyers took essentially the same curricula and studies as a lawyer who specialized in tax law. In law school. But once they're into the law in the professional and out of law school, quite often they go on to specialize in a particular area, such as labor law, criminal law, tax law, corporate law, that kind of thing.
So you said you love litigating, and is there something about litigation and being in that courtroom that really intrigues you and motivates you? And if so, could you describe that?
Yeah, the answer is yeah. It did. It doesn't do it anymore. But yeah, it gets the adrenaline up. It requires you to think on your feet and the like. I hope that telephone in the background does not. Hopefully, yeah, it'll go away. Yeah, that's the ultimate experience, is to try a case to a jury and get an appropriate verdict. But it's hard work, but I enjoyed it very much.
Very good. So was there any desire to be a judge?
Yes, in fact, I ran for county judge in Hillsborough County in the year of 1972.
Okay.
And I came very, very close to winning that. But I didn't win. I lost by a few votes. And shortly thereafter, there came a vacancy for the governor. Had the authority to appoint a county judge because of that vacancy right after that election. Well, another young man who was in law school with me at Howard was a class behind me and was a native Tampian, George Edgecombe. He got that position by appointment. I didn't, but he was a good man, and he served well as the first Black county judge or the first Black judge at all in Hillsborough County. I would like to think that it was my candidacy that demonstrated that we were capable of being a judge in this county, and that we were willing to serve. In a sense, it's unfortunate, but on the other hand, it's very fortunate that George Edgecombe got that position.
Yes, yes, yes. So you have a book. Oh, I forgot to mention in the introduction that Attorney Dawson is also an author. The name of the book is The Journey of an African Legal Eagle. Could you explain a little bit about your book, Attorney
Yes,
Dawson?
just briefly. I don't want to give it all away. I want them to buy my book.
Buy the book.
Buy the book. But let me just tell you a little bit. It's kind of like the story of my life, and it begins with the sort of clarification that, just in case anybody thought that I was always a lawyer, that this life for me did not begin as a lawyer, but rather it began as I alluded to earlier, as a gospel singer. I sang gospel music with my mother and my brother, and life, as I say, began for me in this life as a gospel singer and not a lawyer. But later, it enabled me to get to where I could become and did become a lawyer. Now, the book essentially documents my travels through life, both as a kid who got to college and who went to the military as an officer, and who became a lawyer, and who became involved with the organized bar, and who tried all of the right cases and helped a number of young lawyers to become lawyers. Mm-hmm. Another idea that I had was to try to help others to become lawyers. In the course of 54 years in the active practice of law, as of this day that I'm still doing it, I've helped quite a number of young people. At last count, about 30-some lawyers have become lawyers. Yeah.
So you are a mentor to other upcoming legal or attorneys that are up and coming.
That's right. Yeah.
So I see that you have the word Esquire behind your name. Forgive me for not knowing this, but could you explain what that means?
Well, I can. It's simple as that. It is a title. I think originating in England, mm-hmm. That goes with lawyer. Lawyer is called Esquire, Esquire, and it's true for male or female. And if you use Esquire, then you don't use Mr. or Mrs.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's a quote by Stephanie Price that reads, "In order to truly know where you are, where you're going, we must learn to embrace our past. When we know better, we do better. Having knowledge and understanding of our history can open doors and opportunities for growth." Now, learning about your past and your contributions to our society, like besides having the school named after you, what would you want your legacy to be?
Well, I would like to think that somewhat like what I'd like for it to be would be that I did not set about to earn all of the money that I could earn, but to do all of the good that I could do. And in doing good for others, you do good for yourself. So much I have led or been the co-leader of much of the civil rights activity in the Tampa Bay area since 1966. I led the campaign against the Ye Mystic crew of Gasparilla.
That's
Yes,
huge.
I led that, and that was in the face of some well-settled leaders of the community who did not take too kindly about Blacks demonstrating against their holiday that they set aside for themselves. But it was a major activity locally. They let the schools out. Schools had a holiday just to go to Gasparilla, to the parade and to the state fair and all. And yet they were essentially excluded from direct participation for a long period of time. And then for an even longer period of time, Blacks were not admitted, nor were women admitted to the Mystic crew of Gasparilla or to any of the other groups that formulated this whole thing called Gasparilla. Well, I put together a finite group of Blacks in this community, Otis and others who raised sand about that and made that change and forced them to change. We also, I led or was instrumental in fighting the idea of bringing a slave ship to Tampa called the Witter or the Wider. The Witter was a slave ship that had been used, and they proposed to bring it to Tampa as some type of a amusement event. And we got word of that from friends of mine in Boston, where it had been tried and rejected. And so we got busy and we rejected it, soundly rejected that idea in Tampa, and so forth. So many of the activities, certainly since the 60s, that involve direct action and demonstration and the like, I have participated or led it, and all combining to make Tampa a slightly better place to live than we found it.
Well, that is truly amazing, because I had heard about some of those inequities. You know, when I grew up, I don't think we had any Black crews during Gasparilla when I was younger. I think it came afterwards. So yes, those are major. And these are three major cases that really help with civil rights in the Tampa area. So I would surmise that you were a part of a lot of what we will call tackling those inequities in the Tampa Bay area for civil rights and equality for Black and brown
That's
folks.
true. Like I said, I wasn't scared.
You weren't scared. That's right. That is so amazing. Do you have any other cases that you would like to share with us that we don't know that you've? Because I'm really intrigued. Like I would say, like, I knew of Warren Dawson, never the major impact that you've had in the city of Tampa, like I'm learning today. So I really appreciate you sharing. Are there any others that you're being a little
it is all contained
Mhm.
in this
in your
book that
book?
I show
All
you
right,
now.
there we go, right now.
And
Warren
I don't
Hope
know-
Dawson, The Journey of an American Legal Eagle. Make sure African legal eagle. That's right. And I put the title in the chat for those of you who would like to get a copy. At this time, I'm going to introduce my executive director, Dr. Felita Lewis. Dr. Lewis, welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Fullwood, and Attorney Dawson. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's a pleasure to see you again. I'm just like Ms. Fullwood, I'm just so intrigued and awe, just listening and learning about your background and your experiences and your accomplishments, a lot more than I've ever would have believed. And so we certainly appreciate the contribution that you've had to our local community.
I'm pleased to be here.
Absolutely, sir. So I will tell you that our team has been deeply engaged in the planning and the celebration of Black History Month that's coming up in February. And, you know, the planning starts now because after we come back from the holiday break, then we go right into January, and then it's time for us to press forward for February and beyond. And so we're doing a lot of work in that regards alongside our academic services team, a lot of internal and external partners. So as we are planning those activities and those lessons and those resources and recognitions, my question to you is, what words of advice or wisdom would you share with the generation coming up now in that regards, as it specifically relates to Black history?
Don't let anyone stop the teaching of American history that includes the history of Blacks, because it is the American history. It is an essential and necessary part of American history. And it really may get emphasized during the month of February, but it's a reality and a needed resource every month of the year.
And I would say that I absolutely agree. Thus, you're being on tonight, because as we did say, it's Black history, not only in February, but February and beyond. And you're part of our Black History Heritage Project, in which we're educating our greater Tampa Bay community about some of our trailblazers, not only during the month of February, but every month throughout the year. So we thank you for coming on to tell your story, to share your accomplishments and your contributions to our community. I heard the superintendent make mention of your school tonight, the school that's been named in your honor, listening to the board meeting. So we're glad to hear that you are deeply engaged in visiting the school and being a part of that work that's there. Anything that we can do to help and support the work that you do, we are here. And we appreciate you sharing your story with our greater community. And we promise to cycle back around to you. So just know that you have a partner in this work, and we will be coming back to ask you to re-engage with us as we continue our Black History and Heritage Project.
Thank you so very, 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 very much.
And Ms. Fullwood, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. And I want to say thank you, because without the work that you did with Manning versus School Board, I wouldn't have been able to attend Hillsborough County Public Schools and be integrated, or probably even work in the downtown office where I work now. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for fighting for people like me. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We want the world to know. We want the world to know. So with that, thank you all, everyone who is here on the call. And again, I listed the our YouTube page there. Grab it and copy it, and or you can go on our website on the school board of Hillsborough County Public Schools and just go to Family and Community Engagement, and you can access it from there as well, and share this video will be posted, and share it with all of your friends. Thank you for being with us tonight. I think we have one. Tremendous contributions. They said, thank you so much for your work and selflessness. That's from the audience, and great job. So with that, I want to tell everyone good night. And
Good night.
good night.